We are the most ordinary family in California. We don't live poor, but we don't live rich either. I just started school this year, my first academic year in my life. I enjoyed studying. I did my homework and tried to study well. My mom drove me to school every day in her car. I love her so much. My dad worked as a regular employee at a bank, serving visitors and directing other employees to solve a particular issue, and my mom worked as a freelance designer. But everything changed in one day. My mother became very ill with an unknown virus. At my young age, I thought she had a common cough that would pass soon, and I was sick more than once, and I was treated quickly. But my mom was still not recovering. At some point, my father told me that we would temporarily lock my mother in a separate room so that she would not infect us. Days and weeks passed, and I hadn't seen my mom in a very long time. We called the doctors, but they didn't help. Then I thought, why can't we just take mom to the hospital to get her help? But my father told me that it was very expensive and our insurance wouldn't cover it. At some point, I began to notice one very strange thing. I've always seen all kinds of doctors come into our house, but I've never seen them leave. It seemed very strange to me. Maybe I just don't remember it. Then I decided to check it out. The next time we called the doctor, I greeted him and wanted to go with him to my mother's room, because I hadn't seen her for a very long time. My father shuddered at me, saying that it was dangerous and I could get infected. The doctor supported his father, and they went into the room. As soon as they entered, I smelled a very unpleasant smell coming from my mother's room. He looked like rotten meat that had expired. I also felt how hot and stuffy it was in that room, as if it hadn't been ventilated for several days. I was terribly interested. I wanted to see my mother, so at night, while everyone was sleeping, I decided that I would carefully enter her room. After waiting for nightfall, I picked up my old flashlight and carefully, slowly, going down the stairs from the second floor to the first, I go to that very cherished room. I was looking forward to it. When I reached the room, I stood in front of the door and decided to listen. It was quiet. I opened the door and went inside. What I saw was not normal. The mother's bloody body was lying on an old mattress. Chains were chained to her hands and feet so that she could not run, and in front of her, on the other side of the room, lay the dismembered bodies of the very doctors who went to my mother. It suddenly dawned on me that my father was killing those very doctors in this room and feeding their body parts to my mother. From the horror of what was happening, I screamed so hard that it wasn't my mom who woke up. She saw me and screamed. She started twitching in different directions, that the chains were barely holding up under the strain of her strength. I knew that she was about to break them and get free. A confused father came running to my screams. He asked me what I was doing here and told me to run away quickly. At that moment, the chain on my mother's arms and legs could not stand it and broke. Hungry, full of anger and hatred, an enraged mother attacked my father. I ran away to his screams, quickly went into my room and hid in the old closet where my clothes were hanging. I hoped that my father would be able to cope and run with me too. I started crying softly, wiping my tears with my school uniform. After 10 minutes, I started to calm down when I suddenly heard footsteps coming upstairs to my room. Mom's slow movements enveloped the walls of my room. I felt even more scared. I held my breath, hoping that everything would pass and no one would touch me. Suddenly, the door of my closet opened, and I saw her. Her face was smeared with blood. Blood was flowing from her mouth, and in her left hand was my father's head. I ran out of the closet in complete shock, ramming into this creature, and later out of my house. Running outside, I looked back. In front of me was a picture of my mother, standing at the threshold of the entrance to the house and looking at me. It wasn't my mom anymore.